Well, a very good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. Before we start working through the agenda, can I call upon Lisa to share with us who's here in the chamber and who's online?
Good morning, everybody. So if I start with everybody who's online, so first of all, I have Gareth Owens, Councillor Thomas, Claire Banchard and Councillor Ellis. In the room, we have the Chair, Brian Harvey, Vice Chair, Alan Rainford, Councillor Mullin, Councillor Parkhurst, Councillor Shallcross, Officers Chris Taylor, Craig MacLeod, Neil Cockerton and Cabinet members Councillor Jones and Councillor Jones, Christine Jones and Richard Jones, apologies, and obviously myself as well, Lisa Brownbill.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Thomas, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, but I will have to leave the meeting at 11 o'clock because I have a hospital appointment.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with the agenda now. First item, apologies for absence. There's one apology from Councillor Carberry. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? No. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of October of this year. That was specifically to receive the statement of accounts for 24-25. Can we just take them for accuracy? Anything on page 5, anything on page 6? In which place, members, could I please have a mover and a seconder for these minutes? Councillor Parkhurst and Councillor Shawcross. Thank you very much indeed. On to item 4, which is the update on unpaid carer services in Flintshire. This is the first of 2 reports from Craig MacLeod.
Diolch, Chair. Yes, it's an update report. It gives an update on 3 areas specific that have been undertaken in relation to supporting informal carers. And I have to say, informal carers are the backbone of social care and health services. And we always important to thank and be proud of the carers, both adult carers and young carers here in Flintshire, and recognise their need of support on the job they do. In terms of the report, it covers 3 elements. The first element is updating members around a recommissioning exercise that we undertook. A lot of our services for carers are provided through expert third sector organisations, and we went through a recommissioning process which included 7 lots, and those services have all been commissioned, contracts issued and all governance followed, and those services are well underway and being delivered and making a difference in the support they provide to carers in Flintshire. The second element of the report is an update on an investigation review that the Ombudsman conducted, and the Ombudsman decided that their office wanted to take a deep dive into support provided to informal carers in Wales and chose 4 local authorities where they did site work, really looking and doing an in-depth investigation around not just the numbers but the quality of service provided. And there were a number of recommendations that were for those 4 authorities, but for the whole of Wales as well. In the report, we identify that we've been through that process with the Ombudsman. There was lots of good practice identified by the Ombudsman in Flintshire, as well as some areas for development and improvement. There is an action plan and we've moved forward with all the recommendations. There is one recommendation that the Ombudsman has made where I would say that in Flintshire we are compliant with the spirit and outcome and intention of that recommendation, but we haven't implemented it to the letter. And just to be clear, the Ombudsman recommended that we wrote to carers and in that letter advised them of the outcome of that assessment. Our practice is to share the outcome of that assessment, the actual document, with a covering letter. So to actually then put it in the covering letter would be a repetition of what we already send them. So we're confident we're delivering on the outcome and what that intends to do. And then the third element of this report is a real celebration around a Flintshire resource. So Newkiss, who are our lead partner in providing carer services, have now a carers hub on Mould High Street. That was a great reflection of how the councils work together, because it's not only around looking at carers, but the regeneration team here in Flintshire really helped with the development of that building, and it's an absolute asset. And I would commend anyone who is able to drop in and find out the services that they offer for our communities in Flintshire. So that's a whistle-stop tour, but I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions, please? Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, diolch, Chair, and thank you, Craig, for your report. I've got one question really, is regarding the PSOW review and the recommendation which you didn't agree with, which is the template letter. On page 14, paragraph 1.09, it says that the PSOW have been unwilling to amend their recommendation. So, you know, despite the good points that you've made, they haven't presumably agreed with those points. What are the ramifications for the council for not, complying with the PSOW recommendation? And would it make successful claims to the Ombudsman more likely if the council doesn't comply?
So just in terms of response to that, I need to be clear that these weren't individualised recommendations for Flintshire. What the Ombudsman has done is made recommendations for the whole of Wales. And I think, so if I was the Ombudsman's office, my guess is what they don't want to do is 22 different variations of those recommendations. So I understand from their office perspective, they've made a recommendation and that recommendation is for Wales, and they won't be entering into individual negotiations around that. But certainly we've been working very closely with the Ombudsman's office. They understand the approach that we're taking. About ramifications, I think that we can clearly demonstrate that the outcome of that assessment is provided to our carers and that we've discharged our functions in the approach that we're taking, albeit not in the actual specific wording. But I don't think it leaves us vulnerable because we are still providing what is needed.
Let's go online now, and Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Craig, for the report. And I noticed in the report that on each occasion where there's reference to the possibility of additional resources, which is, I think, the thing that is always flagged up in reports, you say with regard to basically the revenue, capital and human resources, there's no additional resources above what has already been budgeted for. I think I'm correct in that observation. But the thing that makes that possible, and it's the first point that Craig made, and I think it's worth really emphasising it, is the immensely valuable work that the army of carers do, unpaid carers. And I think it is worth just reiterating that and stressing the need to really appreciate and value what these unpaid carers do to really support those vulnerable residents in our community. So a sort of big thank you to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. And Craig, you would certainly echo that, I think. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch. Bore da, pawb. Well, Dave's just stole my thunder, actually, because I just want to say a massive thank you to all our carers that we have in Flintshire. And we have the most carers across Wales in Flintshire, 18,000, awful lot of carers. But a massive thank you and recognition to our young carers who can be as young as 4 or 5 years old. And we give them a lot of support via Newkiss and other agencies and voluntary organisations and ourselves, because they do just the most amazing job. And a lot of people don't realise that young children out there are caring for relatives, for friends, you know, and they're doing their schoolwork and everything else and trying to have their childhood at the same time. So it's a balancing act for those young people, and it's very difficult at times. So I'm just thrilled that we do so much in Flintshire to support. So it's not just adult carers, it's young carers as well, who we must recognise in this. And this report does identify that. But I'd like to put it on record, my thanks and our team's thanks for everything that they do, because they save so much money for the authority, for Betsy, for everybody by the work that they do. And they just do it. It's a normal day for them. You know, it's not 9 to 5, it's all day, every day, and fitting in their own schoolwork and pleasure time at the same. And it's really difficult for them, bless them. So thank you, massive thank you.
Let's go online again now. Councillor Ellis. You're on mute, Councillor Ellis. Nope. While you're finding yourself, let's go to Councillor Jones.
Yeah, it was actually more of a question for Craig, if that's all right. I suppose the young carers amount has gone up by 290%, which is quite extraordinary when you compare it to adults. Is there a reason, an underlying reason for that? And what kind of things do NewKISS do to support them? Because that's a pretty massive increase, isn't it? Thanks.
It is a massive increase, and I would contend that it's still an underrepresentation of the number of young carers out there. Part of our job in social services and working with our partners, including education, is to really ensure that we reach out, identify and offer support to young carers. Part of the increase in that is the focus that we've had. About 5 years ago, we recommissioned care services for young carers. We involved young carers in the commissioning process, so they were really clear about who they felt would be the best organisation to engage with them. Working with education has been absolutely key, because often it's schools who will identify young carers that aren't known to the social care system. But NewKISS, I would say, put on a very individualised approach to young carers, because no young carer's situation is the same. So they really focus on, one, having a what matters conversation and understanding what's important for that young person and how they can support them, as well as putting on group activities, because sometimes it is about having a break from being a young carer, having some fun and being a child. So there'll be a range of formal support through to group network and support mechanisms. But it is very much targeted, and it is very much reaching out and not expecting young carers to come to us. But our job is about going out, finding them and supporting them.
Thank you. Now back to Councillor Ellis. No, your microphone is not on.
Chair, can I suggest, because Councillor Ellis's microphone's not working, if she wanted to email me with her point and needed a response, I could do that direct outside of the meeting. Is that okay?
That would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments of Gareth? Nope. And Craig, any other questions? In which case, let's go to the recommendations on page 8. There are 3 of them: to acknowledge the update on the process of recommissioning unpaid carer services. Secondly, to acknowledge the outcome of the Public Services Ombudsman of Wales' own initiative investigation into carer services and the progress made against the resulting action plan. And thirdly, to acknowledge the positive work underway with NewKISS to develop our unpaid carer services and the Carers Centre as a hub for unpaid carers in Flintshire. 3 recommendations. Please, do we have a mover? I see Councillor Healy's hand going up and Councillor Mullin. Show of hands, please, all those in favour. Thank you very much indeed. On then to item 5. You can't have too much of a good thing. Craig MacLeod again.
Thank you. So it's been a very busy summer for social services from a CIW inspection perspective. CIW stands for Care Inspectorate Wales, who are our regulatory body for registration and inspection. Over the summer period, they have carried out a focused inspection of our children's services. They've also inspected our children's residential care homes and done a full inspection of in-house domiciliary services. So that includes reablement, extra care, supported living, and domiciliary services. This report focuses majorly on the outcome of the children's inspection. That inspection took place in July 2025. There were 4 inspectors. They reviewed 30 cases and conducted focused interviews and tracked 4 cases with an in-depth assessment. In line with their regulatory framework, they looked at 4 domains, which were people, prevention, well-being, partnership and integration. This report has been to scrutiny, and scrutiny spent some time not just looking at the findings that CIW made, but more importantly, I would contend the action plan that we've produced, which is included as the appendix. And that action plan sets out for members what our strengths and what our areas for development are. We've put our current assessment of the position and context and the action that we're going to take in response to those recommendations. I think for me, there are 4 themes that were coming through that inspection and the recommendations. The first I would entitle accommodation and our support offer. So that was identifying the need for us to expand our in-house residential care because new legislation was passed this year, which will require local authorities to ensure that any placement with a provider, whether that's residential or fostering, is through a not-for-profit model. And that will necessitate us expanding our in-house residential care offer. The second area under that heading was further work needed around improving our accommodation and support offer to our care leavers, and work that we've commenced and needing to continue to pick up with housing and making sure we've got a good offer. And then the third area under that theme, I would say, is about enhancing respite and support for disabled children. The second domain, the theme was around our workforce. There were some really positive comments from our workforce about their passion for working in Flintshire and the support they get. But the reality is, particularly in children's services, we have too many agency staff. We have taken a number of initiatives to try and reduce the agency number, but it remains a challenge for us, and that will be a long-term goal about how we move away from agency. The third area was what I deem consistency of compliance and practice. So that's making sure there's consistency around compliance with the Wales safeguarding procedures. One of the big areas we're taking forward is about making sure that we've got a clear practice model in social services through an enhanced child practice work and something that's called collaborative communications, which is in a recognised model, but also about how we apply risk ratings to each case and further work that we need to do to ensure our partners understand our thresholds. And lastly, the area they identified was a need to update and replace our IT system. It's over 20 years old. There are huge limitations in some of the performance data and workflow that provides, which doesn't help with consistency of practice. And we are in the process as a national approach to replacing our Paris IT system. There's going to be a single system that will cover the whole of North Wales. We'll have our own version of it, but we've gone as a North Wales collective to procure a similar system. So that will bring some synergy and some kind of approaches about how we work together. I think for me, in terms of the next steps, we've got the action plan. That's been to scrutiny. When CIW do an inspection of authority, they have a number of options open to them about what they do next, and that's based on a risk-based approach. They can immediately identify there are concerns and there needs to be extra focus on the local authority. They can agree that the authority needs a bit of time and come back and do another inspection, usually within 6 months. Or they can identify that they're satisfied that the authority is making progress, that plans are in place, and then monitor progress through their normal meetings that they have with us. So every quarter there's a meeting. And in this case, they've opted to go for that third option. So CIW will track progress, will report it to them, but it won't be through formal inspection processes. They have indicated, because every year there is inspection activity in each local authority. We haven't had any yet this financial year in terms of, since the summer, what they will be planning over the next 12 months. My guess is a follow-up which focuses more on adult services.
Thank you very much. There are some questions. Alan, can I come to you first?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Craig, for the report and for the explanation about items in the report. It is generally a very positive report, and the outcome is really good for the council. Just a couple of questions for me, though. First of all, about the comments you've made on page 26 of our agenda, of our pack, where you're referring to children or people with neurodiverse conditions. In the media recently, if the media is to be believed, it does feel as though an awful lot more people are showing neurodiverse conditions. Has that resulted in an increase in caseload for Flintshire? And if so, what sort of impact is that having on the service? Also, a question about the CIW report, which on page 55 talks about agency staff. I know, Craig, you spoke about that. It refers to, I think, a fragile workforce, I think was the words that I picked up. And it says that the council must continue efforts to address this. The shortage of sufficiently qualified and experienced staff has been a feature, I think, of a lot of items that have come to this committee, not just in social services, but in other services as well. And I think part of the council's approach was going to be to introduce a new pay model. And I know that's referred also to in an item later on the agenda, but I wonder whether you felt as though a pay model would at least go some way to addressing those difficulties, though, that over-reliance that there's been on agency staff. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'll pick up first around neurodevelopment. It is a national issue. I don't know what the answer is. Is it greater awareness and a greater understanding and recognition around neurodiversity? Is it greater prevalence? It's probably both of those things, the reality is. What we do know, and I think it's on public record, is there is a significant demand for health colleagues around assessment. I know that they're working in a planned way. The last time I saw data for the East area, which is Wrexham and Flintshire, the longest waiting lists for children and young people were 4 years for an assessment. What that inevitably does is that families can be challenged, and we do have a lot of families come in saying, actually, we need help and support while we're waiting an assessment. So we have seen a significant increase of people coming to our early intervention and early help hub. We have now developed specific projects around supporting families, but not just local authorities leading on that. So one of the schemes that we've got that's run in our early years service is called Empowering Parents, Empowering Communities. And that is about setting up and supporting parents to support other parents and creating those resilient networks. That's great for some people, but others need direct practical help and support. So it is having an impact in terms of demand, I would say, from a local authority perspective, not just for social services. I would imagine if schools were here and education, they would also say that there's an impact about how they can appropriately support those people, and particularly ensure that they are able to attend school and feel safe and supported in school. It is an incredible piece of pressure, I think, and around support. And I think the report recognises that it's an area that we need to invest further in, both locally, nationally, and regionally, in pieces of work that we're doing. The second area that you mentioned was agency. The reality is that we've tried over the years a number of approaches around agency staff. At one point, we brought in 2 managed agency teams. I'm pleased to confirm that we have exited from those arrangements now. We have paid market supplements to try and ensure that we retain our most experienced social workers. And then through work, we developed a career progression system within the pay modelling, and so we were able to exit from the market supplement and now have a level 4 social work grade post. However, we still are not always as financially competitive with some of our bordering authorities, particularly England. I think we have to take a rounded approach. People do come to work because of the pay and terms and conditions, and we need to ensure that we are comparative in that. And I think that the work's happening around the pay model should hopefully assist. But it's not always just about pay. What we need to ensure is that our staff have manageable caseloads, that they get good management support, they feel part of a team. I know Flintshires offer things like hybrid working really helps. So it's not a go for a single thing. We are having to look at, and we've been talking to staff, and I don't know if anyone's seen, but we've got some great adverts at the moment for residential care staff, and they're online, and that involves some of our staff talking about why come to Flintshire, what makes it great, what they're proud about, and I think that's much wider than pay. So we're making sure that we really set out what our offer is here in Flintshire.
Thank you. Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Craig. I think it needs to be recognised that this is probably the most difficult area for council's work. It is the most sensitive, and it has the greatest jeopardy if we get things wrong. Because it can be literally a matter of life or death. And, you know, we know that children around the country and in Flintshire have been in situations which we would not want them to be in. When I read the covering report, I gained, one impression. And then when I read the detailed ICW report, I gained a different impression. So I had to reread the covering report. And to be honest, I don't think it really reflected completely the tone of the ICW report. I won't go into loads of details because that's a scrutiny issue. But just perhaps to give one or two, the Care Inspector at Wales report mentions that there are improvements have been made, but further action is required. You mentioned neurodiverse children. Another area is where cared for children are becoming homeless after they leave the council's the system. The tone of the covering report, I don't think really reflects that there are children who are still having to, present themselves as being homeless in order to, have their housing needs met. And the, neurodiverse children, let's see what page that is, on page 26, I think it is. It doesn't really, paragraph 1.16. It doesn't really give the flavour that there's more that needs to be done. And because I gained two different impressions from reading the covering report and reading the detailed report, I went on to the Care Inspectorate Wales's website to have a look at the specific report on their website, and in their summary it said, and I will quote, "Our improvement check found a mixed picture with areas of improvement alongside important concerns that require attention." And I think that is a very balanced statement, because it recognises the improvements that have been made, but it also suggests that there's quite a bit more to do. So when I look at the recommendation that we're being asked to agree to on page 24, which is, the committee commends the work of the portfolio's leadership, practitioners and staff as reflected and endorsed by this CIW report. Yes, I mean, we do commend the work of, your team and all the staff involved, absolutely 100%. But I don't think that is complete enough, because it doesn't reflect that there are, still some big areas of work to do, which, if we get it wrong, could have a catastrophic effect on children in our care. So I would like to recommend that we change that recommendation. We take the words from the CIW report, so that we're taking their words, not mine. And I will speak slowly. So my suggestion is, the committee notes that the CIW improvement check found a mixed picture with areas of improvement alongside important concerns that require attention, and that it welcomes the commitment of the portfolio's leadership, practitioners and staff in addressing the concerns raised. Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to come back on that, Craig, the discrepancy between the summary and the full report?
Yeah, in the report, I think we've tried to reflect. So I'm looking at the executive summary which says that the CIW identified the need to tackle specific areas to enhance, strengthen practice and service provision. I accept what you're saying is that we could have been more specific in including those areas, but certainly we brought the report and we brought the action plan, and I would say in scrutiny we went through and really spent time looking at the specific findings and the recommendations. So whilst they weren't in the covering report, the appendix really sets those out on the left-hand side, and that's what scrutiny focused on, is looking at what are the recommendations, what are the areas for improvement, and what is the portfolio doing around those. So I'd want to give assurance that at scrutiny, that was the focus. It wasn't just looking at what does the covering report said, it was what are the findings, what are the recommendations, and portfolio, what are you doing about that? So I just want to give that assurance around the scrutiny function.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, just a quick, if I'm not mistaken, at the scrutiny, the actual recommendation that was provided to scrutiny was to note the report, but I think they changed it to commend, didn't they, during that report, because they felt it was so strong. That was scrutiny reading the report, going through the items individually and changing the recommendation because they felt so positive. That's my recollection of the scrutiny conversation.
That's right, Councillor Jones.
Any other? Councillor Jones, did you want to come in?
Deal. Yeah, and just what Richard said, scrutiny went through this with a fine tooth comb, and they were, very positive about the actions that were recommended that we take and that we are taking or taken. So we have got an excellent team in social services, and I thank Councillor Parkhurst for acknowledging that, because the leadership and the staff that we've got there, absolutely amazing. And our focus is always on the child and the voice of the child, which has been referred to in the report. As a safeguarding hub, I'll work with housing for any child who's leaving care who needs to be housed before they become homeless. And to be honest, this is working really well. And with the Safeguarding Hub, we work really closely with education. And all this is highlighted when the inspectors came, and they were, really impressed by the way we do work in partnership. So I'm quite confident that everything that is in this action plan is being addressed or has been addressed, and that our children in Flintshire will be as safe as they deserve to be. And we've got the staff and the officers who, work every day to ensure that happens.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I recognise that the report, actually, I'm looking at the report, and yes, the strengths, there are some really good issues here. However, taking into account what Councillor Parker said, there are some areas which are recognised for improvements, and I did realise that Craig said there is an action plan which will identify these. But apart from the homelessness, what actually sprung out to me was on the main report, and it's page 10 or page 58 of this report, and it's paragraph 4.24, and the bold, which actually says the local authority must ensure practitioners constantly consider and take immediate action required to keep a child and any other children who may be at risk safe. This includes gathering further information where necessary and ensuring children are seen promptly and consistently. That causes me some concern, and along with what actually Councillor Parkhurst has said, could we include within that paragraph that we have a progress report? I take on board that scrutiny gave glowing reports, but I just think as this committee we should actually acknowledge, as well as praising the strengths. Please appreciate I am praising the strengths, and I know that there are really good staff. But I think from a local authority perspective, we need also to be aware and note areas which do need improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. I think we just need to be a little careful that we don't venture too far into scrutiny territory. But Councillor Johnson, put your microphone on.
You recognise the point I was going to make. It is really on the role of audit as opposed to the role of scrutiny, and that I was listening to the discussion there. I mean, my understanding is that when it came to scrutiny, that was dealt with within over an hour was spent on this, whereas here we spent about 20 minutes. So I'm just wondering, would you be? I see Alan's nodding as well. It's just a definition and clarity about what the role of the audit committee is in doing this. I think that'll be grateful, be helpful for all members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Healy.
Thank you, sir. I think we'll perhaps get clarification on what the role of audit is if we discuss what Councillor Parkhurst said, and he made sure it wasn't his words, but he was capturing the words of the report itself And whilst we might agree with the recommendation that's in the report that we've got, I wonder if we were to put forward a second recommendation. Now, this is whether it is the role of scrutiny or the role of audit, which was along the lines of what Councillor Parkhurst worded carefully, but they were not his words, they were the words from the report. And to do this, because we recognise precisely what was said, the immense importance of this service and the valuable work that they're doing, but the terrific cost if it goes wrong. And so, in addition to recognising the value of what we're doing, I think there is need for something else to be there, i.e. Councillor Parkhurst's recommendation, if it is the role of audit to make an additional recommendation when it is simply capturing the words of the report itself. If that were the case, then I would second what Councillor Parkhurst said.
Thank you very much, Councillor Healy. Any other comments? Craig.
So I think there's just 2 points. I just want to be clear if I've understood what you've said, right, Councillor Parkhurst. I think that wording isn't in the report, but it's on the CIW website as their introduction to the report. Is that right? Rather than being the wording of the report. And I've gone back to actually what they say in next steps in the report. And there's 2 areas. One is about considering the identified areas for improvement and taking appropriate action that CIW will monitor through its ongoing performance review activity, and that they expect the local authority to share positive practice. I think what the next step for us is, obviously we're developing and implementing the action plan. At the end of the financial year, I have to produce, as the statutory director of social services, an annual report that sets out what's happened during the year. And plainly within that, we will be taking what did CIW find and what action we take. That will go through scrutiny, but it will also go through other functions as well. So as well as reporting to CIW and scrutiny, we will also be doing an annual report to provide assurance or to explain where there have been challenges in taking these forward and why and what we're doing around that. I didn't mention that annual report element, apologies.
So my question to you, Councillor Parkhurst, really is, are you assured by the response that you've heard and the additional comments?
Chair, I do. Well, yes, I am assured by the comments from the Chief Officer. I think he and his team do an absolutely fantastic job in very difficult and challenging circumstances. But I do still feel that the recommendation, whilst I would agree with it as a form of words in itself, I think it could be usefully expanded to reflect the fact that the CIW noted that whilst there were, big improvements, that there were also, there was also work to be done, and it was a mixed picture in their words. And I think that would be a fair sort of reflection to record.
You're nodding, Craig. Are you accepting that amendment and recommendation?
If it's within the role of this committee, it's yours. I mean, that's the finding of CIW. I'm not challenging that in any way. I'm recognising that it was a mixed picture and there are areas of improvement that we need to continue with.
I think I'd like to see how members, Councillor Jones, sorry.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised, to be honest, with this, because my view is that if social services had any doubt about the way this had been written, the way it's been reported, they would have highlighted that at the time of the scrutiny committee. I don't think it's for the Governance and Audit Committee to suddenly decide that that isn't the case, and they know better than the social services scrutiny. And I'm really surprised the way it's been developed, the conversation's been developed, because whereas I understand it's important to challenge the governance of these things, I don't think it's the right of this committee to say, well, actually, the scrutiny committee didn't notice this. We're noticing it, and we want to change the outcome of recommendation. I don't think that's correct. I mean, I'll let Gareth come in, but I think Gareth should make some kind of determination here. But I think if there had been a doubt of the way this had been reported and overseen and the action plan developed, scrutiny committee would have been the body that would have identified that.
Although, Councillor Jones, I think we reserve the right to change the recommendations if we see a different perspective on things. And that's what I'm trying to tease out at the moment, just how people are feeling. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going back to the remit of the Audit Committee, because I do have issues of, having sat in the Scrutiny Committee myself, and on the Audit Committee for a long time for both, that there is a tension between the two. But I do notice that, for example, within the remit set out in the Constitution for this committee, what's it now, on external audits and external regulatory bodies, page 120, I'm going to second, it is number 20, it says receive all audit reports, which this seems to have done, and the annual audit letter issued by the external auditor, which quite clearly this is, and ensure that all agreed recommendations are implemented. Now, I might be looking at the wrong part of it, but it would seem that the role of this committee is to ensure that all agreed recommendations are implemented, which would seem that's the role of this committee as opposed to scrutinising what has gone and been agreed. That to me is the difference. So scrutiny's said these, and this committee then makes sure that what's been recommended is implemented.
Let's go now. Did you change your microphone off?
Oh, no.
Let's go now to Gareth for some advice.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, a couple of things, I think. You are correct. This committee, of course, has the right to differ. I think the point that Craig made in his own report, and that has been picked up by Councillor Parkhurst, is that there's at least one recommendation where we think we're complying with the spirit, but not with the exact wording. If this committee is concerned, then the comments made by cabinet members are also correct. It's not really for this committee to substitute its own view, but it recognises it. In recognising your concerns, you remit it back to scrutiny and say, well, actually, look, we've considered this, and these are the concerns that remain with us. Did you consider them? And please, if you did not, please address them.
Thank you very much indeed. That sounds like good advice. Can I just see a show of hands to see how many people would find that an acceptable way forward? Unless you wanted to say something first, Councillor Jones.
Deal. Yeah, I was just going to point out, and it's on page 60 actually, but CIW are extremely thorough. And once they've done an inspection, they monitor us continually then to make sure that we have taken all the actions that were recommended. So we're constantly being inspected after we've had an inspection. So we can have that we can give that assurance that everything that was brought up in that report will be done, because CIW make sure it is done. And because they're a very important body to social care, and what they say we always act on. And it actually says in the report that CIW expects the local authority to consider the areas identified for improvement and take appropriate action to address and improve these areas. CIW will monitor progress through its ongoing performance review activity with the local authority, which is what they do after every inspection. And we do have an awful lot of inspections. I mean, we have one virtually every month. That's how it seems. We have one every week, some weeks. But that's what they're there for, and we welcome inspections because it's good for us, and it's, it's something that is statutory. We have to do it, and we're quite happy to do it. So we know that it's being followed through afterwards. So just comments off me there.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Healy, your hand is up again.
Yeah, I'll admit I would have really preferred to have had greater clarity on whether it is within our rights as an audit committee to make an additional recommendation or not, rather than be requested to play a game of ping pong and bounce it back to the scrutiny committee. I just wondered, as a newcomer to this committee, whether it was within our jurisdiction or not.
Thank you. Can I propose, if I'm allowed to from the chair, that this recommendation stands, but we add an additional one which says, following Gareth's advice, that we refer back to scrutiny and say, word to the effect of, this was something we talked about, we just wanted to draw your attention to it, and we would welcome a report sometime in the future. Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, but I think we're going down a path we don't need to go down. I deliberately didn't go through the report with a fine-tooth comb when I spoke earlier, because quite rightly, that is a matter for scrutiny. My only concern, and I'm also not concerned about the actions that are being taken. I think Craig and his team do a fantastic, brilliant job. I'm in no way criticising any of that. My only concern is that the recommendation does not, in my view, accurately or fully, not accurately, that's the wrong word, does not fully reflect the tone of the CIW report, which is why I suggested expanding it to reflect that. And I don't think it needs to go back to scrutiny. I think scrutiny have looked at this thoroughly, fully confident in what they've done. This is purely a matter that this report, which has been presented to us, in my view, when you read just the summary pages, does not give you the full picture. And I'm not criticising the draft, I'm just saying that's my impression. So I have recommended, I have put a proposal to change the recommendation. Councillor Healy has seconded it. And if that is approved, then that's the end of it. We don't need to go back to scrutiny because they're already dealing with things. The committee notes that the CIW improvement check found a mixed picture with areas of improvement alongside important concerns that require attention, and that it welcomes the commitment of the portfolio's leadership, practitioners and staff in addressing the concerns raised.
We've had a proposal, we've had a seconder. Please, a show of hands for all those in favour of the new recommendation. I'm seeing 2 hands, 3 hands going up. I'm seeing Councillor Ellis, Councillor Healy, Claire Blanchard and Councillor Parkhurst. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? I think it's the recommendation as shared by Councillor Parkhurst, which has come through. Thank you very much. And you might, if necessary, Councillor Parkhurst, confirm the exact wording with Sharon at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. Shall we now go on, if we may, to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Audit Wales report, Oversight of Partnerships report. I think this report is coming from Gareth. Gareth, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As with the CIW, this is the third and final place for reporting the outcomes of the Audit Wales inspection of our partnerships. Chair, you will see that it has been to scrutiny, it has been to Cabinet. Between them, they have approved the management action plan in response to the findings and recommendations of Audit Wales. Audit Wales looked at two particular partnerships within the council. It's fair to say, Chair, that there are a good many partnerships within the council, and we see regular examples of them reporting back at, given intervals to the various scrutiny committees and to Cabinet to say how well they are doing. I think that needs to be, and Audit Wales identified that needs to be a more formalised and a more systematised level of reporting, because what we don't have is a single concrete list of partnerships, and therefore we can't run down that list each year to make sure that they've reported to the appropriate body as required. If you're going to create a list, you need to decide what to put on the list, and that then leads to the recommendation about needing to have a clear definition. We have come up with a rough working definition. It's not perfect. It is that we will list as a partnership anybody where we work with an outside organisation to carry out the functions or responsibilities of the council in a way that isn't done on a commercial basis. So if we've let a contract and we're paying outside bodies, that's a contract. If we are, as happens, working with other councils, or we are working with say the fire authority, as we heard about when we were reporting this item to scrutiny, then and we work side by side and we try to align our priorities, then that would be a partnership, and it's trying to draw that distinction between commercial contract and some of the more complex arrangements that we have in place. Lisa's team are currently compiling that list. The deadline for us as chief officers to have submitted our partnerships to Lisa's team passed at the end of so they will now be collating that list, and they will be drawing up, along with scrutiny, reporting schedules to make sure that each partnership reports to scrutiny at the relevant interval. And that will probably come to the coordinating group that you chair as chair of this committee, so that we can make sure that they are all allocated out in the way that we do with audit reports and the way that we do with our corporate risks. So it's putting it onto that systematised basis and that systematised reporting, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much indeed, Gareth. Any questions? Alan, first of all.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Gareth, for the report. Just a quick question for me, really. You've recognised that there is a limited amount of staffing resources available to address this issue, to systemise this, as you put it. And you've also highlighted in your covering report that there are going to be longer timescales for actions to be implemented as a result of that. I wondered whether the timescales, the completion dates that you've set out in the management response form on page 95 and 96 are realistic, given the shortage of staffing resources. I mean, we're nearly in December now, and some of the latest action that's due is only 6 months away, more or less. So I wonder whether those dates were realistic. Thanks.
I think they are. We have, we're not reinventing the wheel on this, Chair. There was a piece of work done a little while ago by the Audit Commission around governance for partnerships. And what we have done is we've tracked that, and we've found examples of councils where they've pulled together the work and the documentation that we need to do We will review that documentation to make sure that it is appropriate and that it is suitably tied into our own structures. But the bulk of the work is there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gareth, for your introduction. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight perhaps page 86, where it says the council does not have a clear process for assessing the value for money of its partnerships. This is a theme which has cropped up in previous Audit Wales's reports. And so therefore, when we are considering the report, I think we need to consider that point with a particular focus. I understand, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but Audit Wales chose the two partnerships concerned, but there is an acceptance that they were representative of the situation with all our partnerships. So the comment about not having a clear process for assessing value for money for all of our partnerships would be of concern to this committee, I think, and something which needs to be wholly addressed in the action plan.
Thank you, Gareth.
Just to say, Chair, that to reiterate and perhaps to expand slightly on what I said previously, we see examples of our partnerships reporting into scrutiny on a regular basis. So we know that they report. Through those reports, we can see whether or not they're achieving the purposes for which we entered into them. And if we achieve our political aims, don't forget that's how Audit Wales rates value for money, because they recognise that we're not a commercial organisation and that we will be and so it's not about price per unit, it's about actually, if you're putting time and effort into this, are you achieving the aims that you wanted to achieve? We see those reports, but what we don't have, as I said, is that list beloved of auditors and bureaucrats, where we can go down and say, right, well, we've done that one, we've done that one, we've done that one, we've missed that one, and we've missed that one. Make sure they do their report. And so it's about giving us that certainty that we have reported at the required interval. And that then enables us to make that assessment of, is every partnership achieving the aims that it was intended to achieve? And therefore, do we know that we are getting value for money, in the sense that we are achieving the political aims that, or the service aims that were the foundation for entering into that partnership? Like I said, we've had reports from the PSB recently. I think they went to scrutiny last month or the month before. We know that we've got it for some. It's just we can't say with certainty we've got it for all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? In which case, please can we go to the recommendations on page 77. The first one is that this committee considers the outcome and the recommendations of the Audit Wales Overview of Partnerships report. And secondly, that this committee supports the management response form and the proposed actions to address the recommendations made by Audit Wales. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Mullin and Allen. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. On to 7 now, which is the annual governance statement mid-year update. Lisa. I beg your pardon. Gareth, are you speaking to this first?
Sorry, Chair, I was having trouble finding the buttons to take myself off mute. I can speak to it first, Chair. Chair, as you know, we have the annual governance statement as part of our accounts. and we scrutinise that partway through the year to make sure that we're on track with the identified corrective actions. You will see from paragraph 1.03 that we are working through those actions. We are slightly over half, are making good progress, and so that's 15 out of the 27 actions, and 12 need some more work or need some more progress. Given the numbers there, Chair, I wasn't proposing to read through each of them in detail. They are highlighted, though, within the report if members wanted to pick them up. So I'm happy to take questions. I don't know whether Lisa wanted to add anything or the Chief Executive, Chair.
Okay, let's open it up for questions. Alan.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Gareth. Excuse me. Couple of questions for me on the progress updates and the actions. First question relates to the on page 106 to the peer sessions that I think nearly all of us were probably involved in that took place recently. And the progress update report says it intends that an action plan is developed. My question really is, will this committee see the report and the action plan? And do you have any sort of timescales around that? And also similarly on the pay model referred to on page 107, it says this work is ongoing. I wonder again whether you have a date for completing the work on the pay model. Thank you.
I'll start with the pay model simply to say that I think somebody else needs to address that. I haven't seen a timescale for it. I don't know whether Neil, as Mrs. Carney's manager, has seen a timescale for it. I know that work is underway on it because we're currently going through and checking to see what the outcomes will be for each individual post and to make sure that there aren't any anomalies. And we're working through those. But again, like I said, don't know the timescale for that. In relation to the peer review, there were two questions, timescale and will it be reported to this committee? The peer review work was commissioned on behalf of what we call ethical liaison meetings, which are meetings between the Standards Committee and group leaders. If there were to be a report into a formal committee, I would expect it to be going into the Standards Committee and or the Constitution and Democratic Services Committee rather than to here, simply because the issues that were discussed sit more naturally within their remits than they do within this committee. And in terms of timescale, I haven't yet been able to get a meeting of the working group because what was resolved was that we needed a working group to pull together an action plan. A number of group leaders have volunteered to go on to that. A number have agreed to leave it as smaller groups to say, look, they're not going to insist on a place, so that we get a reasonable sized working group of 8, 4 officers and 4 members, chaired by the vice chair of the Standards Committee. To pull that together, and then, as you say, I need to pull together an action plan, but I haven't done so as yet, I'm afraid.
Thank you. And Neil, you can provide the missing bit.
Yeah, the question was about pay model and timescales. As Gareth has noted, we're at sort of the final stages in terms of understanding what we call saw thumbing, so where grade boundaries are within the model, the overall model. There's been some discussion with trade union colleagues around that. Ultimately, in terms of timescale, it will have to form part and will form part of the budget considerations. So that's the timescale that we'd work to. It would fall into, provided all the other pieces of work are completed, into the budget considerations, because it's got a material impact for 26-27.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parkhurst.
Thank you, Chair. On page 102 and 103 of the pack, there are 7 principles referred to as A to G, but the glossary of terms doesn't say what those principles are. So it's, for anyone reading the report who's not familiar, wouldn't possibly know what those principles were. Could that be clarified, please?
So, Chair, those are the principles identified by SIPFA as being necessary for good governance. If they're not they will be listed within the AGS itself, but appreciate that it would be useful to list them within the update for ease of reference. If people need to be reminded of them, I'm sure Lisa would be happy to circulate around those principles.
Excellent. Thank you very much. There are no other hands up, so let's move to the recommendation on page 97. We're invited to consider and accept the mid-year progress report for the annual governance statement 24-25. Please, do we have a mover? Alan, a seconder? Councillor Shawcross, all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. On then to item 8 on page 125, the corporate risk register. And this is going to be Neil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is the corporate risk register. It deals with those risks that fall outside our specific portfolios, i.e. they are greater than the portfolio can deal with, so they get escalated up into the corporate risk register. As members will note, there are 15 risks currently identified. There have been 3 new risks added in to the risk register. It's actively monitored and managed. As you can see, some have moved up, increased risk, some have moved down, and some have stayed the same. So that's clear evidence that it is being managed in terms of risk. I don't propose to take the committee through each individual aspect of the risk, but quite happy to answer any questions that members may have in relation to the risk register. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's take Alan first.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Neil, for the report. I suppose my eyes were drawn to the waste risks contained in the report, and in the accompanying paperwork. I guess I was influenced by the news story recently of the appalling illegal dumping of waste in, I think it was Oxfordshire. And I was interested in the reference on the bottom of page 126 where you talk about the law requires anyone dealing with waste to keep it safe, make sure it's dealt with responsibly, and only be given to businesses authorised to take it. And there's no central control process in place at the council at the moment. It feels sort of anecdotally as though that could potentially, because there isn't a central register or control process, it could lead to illegal dumping. Are you confident enough that the mitigations that you're putting in place will go some way to prevent illegal dumping? I couldn't quite get a handle on what the council-wide approach is that's being recommended or suggested here. Yeah, thanks.
So this is about council waste, our internal waste, and controls around that, and having a central point and repository to record all that information. So it's about waste that we generate in this office, waste that we generate in on site in depots, that sort of thing. So what the waste team are doing is pulling all that together in terms of a comprehensive point of reference for county council generated waste. As you'd expect, it is highly regulated within the council. We collect our own waste; it's disposed of in a controlled fashion. The issue and the point at question is evidencing that consistently and comprehensively, and that's what the team have been tasked to do in terms of pulling that information together, so that we can ensure that that duty of compliance is robustly evidenced.
Yeah, I think so. Is the risk which is identified in RST07, does that also therefore relate just to council risk? Sorry, council waste? Because I did notice in the accompanying documents, that you're talking about the changes to the collection of domestic waste. I suppose the way I was viewing this is that once the waste is collected by the council or collected on behalf of the council by somebody else, potentially, whether the mitigations in place are strong enough to prevent any illegal dumping of waste. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think so.
They're owned by whoever the council has appointed to collect waste.
The collection of residual waste is undertaken by our waste services. That's, again, clearly controlled. The third-party waste, or that waste that was and isn't in our control, comes under a different enforcement regime, generally through Natural Resources Wales, depending on where that waste is deposited. So there are, I think, we're probably complicating issues in terms of those two items. One is the duty of care, which relates to our own waste generated that we throw away within or dispose of within the buildings. The other one is the residual waste, the wider residual waste, where we've moved to 3-week collections, and it talks about infraction and all the other things within there. That's a different aspect of it. In terms of those two areas, I'm personally confident that we're addressing those correctly and appropriately within the council. The other areas of waste deposit that are essentially illegal are things that do generally sit outside the scope of the council, unless, as in one particular case, it lands on our land, and then that's a different conversation altogether.
And Councillor Healy, your hand is up.
Thank you, sir. I just want to ask Chief Executive a question about 103, the impact of climate change, where the level of risk has been raised from yellow to amber, and what follows, I think, is worded in an interesting way, because it does seize upon extreme weather events. And I will say I welcome the fact that that little bit of what's commentary that's put there isn't solely confined to flooding, which has naturally been what has occurred to us throughout with regard to the association with climate change. However, there's no specific mention of any other extreme weather event. And I'm going to ask about, wrong time of the year to be asking about extreme heat, I must admit, but I'm going to be asking about how prepared we are for the various risks which extreme heat, which I think is likely to be, we've had episodes of it and it's going to be a story set to run, how this can impact upon the services of the council in terms of things like the need to close schools, the fact that the trains, possibly the buses, won't be running, the risks to infrastructure, the needs maybe to close bridges and so forth, and the general impact. I'm wondering if we have done any work on the close detail of this and what contingency plans may be in the event of the variety of occurrences that can happen during a prolonged heat wave, when also vulnerable people are also seriously at risk. Because I think this is a whole area of work that really needs detailed consideration so that we are prepared. Thank you.
Quite a broad question, Councillor Healy, and a complex one to answer, to be quite honest, because as you quite rightly point out, climate change isn't just about flooding. It's a very significant and obvious one, isn't it, for communities? But as we move through and into further areas of disruption within climate change, and heat is one of them, you're quite right in what you note there. You see road degradation, road surface degradation, rail lines buckling, and significant pressures on healthcare systems. And those impacts are significantly broader than some of the council services that we provide, but we do have to assist those bodies that deal with those issues, particularly health colleagues, through our social services teams in terms of the level of care that they provide in such circumstances. So it's quite a broad question, quite a complex answer to deal with, but we are sighted on it. Our climate change teams are aware of some of the issues that are impacting on the authority, as are the other 22 local authorities, to be quite honest. And it will bring its own challenges and its own costs in the future as we, provide, if we don't do anything to address this as a country, a wider country issue.
Gareth, I think you want to come in on this.
Just to amplify some of what the Chief Executive said, if I might, Chair. There are areas where some detailed work is underway and have been for some time. So, for example, the impact of extreme heat on older people is acknowledged, and there is a system of heat warnings in place for us to tackle that. Likewise, the impacts on our own staff are recognised, and we work on that. Councillor Healy made reference, as did the Chief Executive, to infrastructure. I think that's an area where more development is needed. But as you might expect, the people side of it has already been addressed in large measure. Yeah, and I say as you'd expect, because of course, obviously, we care for our people. People are a primary concern for us, whether they be people within our care or whether they be our employees.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Councillor Jones first and then Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. It was just a thought. If there's a concern, particularly for this committee, they could report this back to the committee working group, coordinating group, which would probably be a good place to put it, because then they are disseminating any work that would need to go to the other scrutiny committees. So that is one. If you think about it, would involve social services, education. It would probably involve the whole sphere of scrutinies. And that's something which you could suggest goes back to that committee or that work group for their consideration to specify.
And Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. On page 127, 106 and 107, just wondering, with today being the 24th, I mean, due to get the provisional settlement, I believe, today, will we be having an update in relation to these risks? Because they are both very significant. And I was just wondering whether they will go to scrutiny and to the Cabinet, but I was wondering, will we be getting an update as well? That's just all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
So these risks do get reported into this committee on a regular basis. The risk levels of both of those are red, and I suspect they'll stay at that level for a period of time. But yes, you will receive reports on those risks and any other risks that are added in or moved out of within this committee. I think the point you're making there is more somewhat dynamically around the financial statements that are coming from Welsh Government and from the Chancellor and how that might impact the wider council. Those will get reported as and when we understand the dimension, the scale and the impacts, and when those announcements are made, Councillor. I hope that helps.
Yes. Yes, thank you, it does.
Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to come back to the waste risk that I think residents might be surprised that when they are required to ensure that any waste that they dispose of, doesn't end up as fly tipping, because they need to check the veracity of the firm they are using. But we don't, as a council, don't have a similar process. So I've got two sort of questions. One is that as this is a legal responsibility, residents could be fined or worse. Are there similar sanctions possible against council, members or indeed officers, if there is a criminal prosecution? And secondly, looking at the actions being taken to manage the risk, which is on page 144, it says basically reporting via monthly senior management team meetings and other measures, and then internal controls and processes to monitor and manage the risk will be established once the council-wide approach is approved through the democratic cycle. I don't quite understand what that second point means. It suggests to me that we don't have a process and there's no immediate intention to have a process, but it will be established at some point in time. I would like clarity on what that timescale is and what specifically the controls and processes are likely to look like. Thank you.
Okay, in terms of that point, Councillor Parkhurst, I will have to revert back to the officer responsible for that piece of work, Chantal and Katie will be, and I'll bring a separate report. Well, I won't bring a separate report, I'll bring an update paper back to members of this committee in relation to that clarity.
Are there any other questions or comments? We've given that a fair hearing, I think. Can we move then to the recommendations on page 125? The first is to acknowledge the 3 additional risks on the corporate risk register. That's the impact of climate change, waste duty of care code of practice, and condition of highway network. And the second recommendation, to be assured that the mitigating actions for each risk on the corporate risk register are adequate to manage the risk. Can I please see a mover, Councillor Healy, and a seconder, Councillor Mullin? All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. On then to item number 9, which is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for 25-26 and the Q2 update. Chris Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. Yeah, this is the Treasury Management 2025-26 Mid-Year Review and Q2 Update Report, which is presented to committee in line with the Treasury Management Strategy. Following the report being reviewed by committee today, this will be considered by Cabinet at its meeting in December and to County Council in January. The mid-year report attaches Appendix 1. And just to pick up some key points, UK consumer price inflation increased over the period from 2.6% in March to 3.8% in August, still above the Bank of England target level of 2%. All enclosed, the Council's Treasury Management advisors maintain the central view that the bank rate will be cut further as the Bank of England focuses on weaker GDP growth more than higher inflation, and it's expecting the bank rate to be cut one more time during 2025-26 to reduce this to 3.75%. During the period, no long-term borrowing has been taken out. We do have a total of debt maturing of just over 3 million, with the majority of this being through PWLB loans and a small amount through government loans. And we will continue to review our position on long-term borrowing in conjunction with our Treasury Management partners. The average investment balance during this period was 41.5 million, and this was an average rate of return for the period being 4.3%. And also to confirm that we have operated within our Treasury Management limits during the year to date. Just moving on to Q2 update, Appendix 2 in the report shows the Council's investments as at the 30th of September 25, and this shows we have 16.5 million invested short term across 6 counterparties. Appendix 3 shows our long-term borrowing requirements of long-term borrowing totals of 316.9, the majority of this being with the Public Works Loan Board. And again, just to confirm, no long-term loans have been taken out in the quarter. And Appendix 4 shows the Council's short-term borrowing at the end of September, which shows an outstanding amount of 15 million during this period with 3 other local authorities. And also, just as a reminder to members, we've arranged Treasury Management training on the 5th of December, which will take place at 10 a.m. till 12 p.m, which will be delivered by our Treasury advisors, all in close. So, well, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chris, for the report. So I can't let it go without at least asking 1 or 2 questions. It feels like Treasury management activity has been relatively quiet in this quarter. As you say, you've not done any long-term borrowing. Just a couple of questions really for me. One relates to the long-term borrowing position. I think I'm right in saying that the council is under borrowed at the moment. And I wonder what Arlene Close's view is as to when the council might start to address that position. I'm probably answering my own question now, but I think that's probably likely to be influenced by the prevailing rate of interest and the level of capital spending by the council. The other question is about the level of investments that you alluded to. They're shown on page 195. I know, I realise this is a snapshot in time, so the position could be different on any other day. But you've got 16.5 million invested as at the 30th of September. It's quite a drop from the position on the 30th of September the previous year. And is that a reflection in part about the declining level of reserves that the council has? Is that a contributing factor to that position? Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Take up the first question, the second question. Yeah, investments are a snapshot in time, so I suppose they can change, and we try to do it in quarters to give some sort of comparison. But again, you can have a big transaction going out the day before than it was previously, which will impact that. But if we looked at it over the first 6 months, the average investment rate is only slightly down compared to last year. Our short-term borrowing is slightly up. Again, there's that level of reserves dropping as well, but that's been able to encourage us to maintain our investment levels. But again, you'll notice that the rates are dropping as the Bank of England cut rates. Our returns have dropped slowly. But again, yeah, it's a snapshot. But over the first 6 months, it's not too far off previous year. Just in relation to long-term borrowing, as is at the point in time of the report, we haven't taken any out, but since then we have done some long-term borrowing. Again, speaking with Arlene Close to look at whether timing's right and get clarification from them as well. You're right, we've got a lot underlying need to borrow, so we've decided to take a bit now as well to take some risk off the table as well, given the uncertain sort of budget market and environment at the minute with the UK budget settlement coming out. So we have done some, and again, I think our aim is to continually chip away at it rather than taking it in bulk to give that flexibility as well if things do change. So it's something we do look at closely with them.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No, in which case, can we move to the recommendation on page 169? We're invited to review the draft Treasury management for 25-26, the mid-year report, and identify any matters to be drawn to the attention of Cabinet at its meeting in December. Can I please have a mover, Councillor Shawcross, and a seconder, Councillor Mullin? All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, and thanks very much, Chris. And we'll see you on the 5th of December for the workshop. And so on now to item 10, which is the annual report of this committee, Governance and Audit Committee. Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. So as you say, this is the annual report for yourselves, Governance and Audit Committee. It's a summary of all of the work that's been undertaken this year, listing all of the reports that you've had, where they align with your terms of reference. It touches on attendance at committees, your training, and any other key aspects. More importantly, it touches on the actions that you raised from the committee, highlighting that obviously they've been increasing the challenges and additional reports that you request. So it just demonstrates how the committee is evolving over time. It's a positive report. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
It's a very full report. Thank you very much for it. Are there any questions? Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lisa, for the comprehensive report. I've only got 1 point to make, and actually regards your introduction, Chair, on page 209. We've talked in previous meetings about how we are sort of on a journey in terms of our effectiveness. We've referenced the Audit Wales's comments about the need for us to show greater proactivity, and we've talked about ways that we have done that. But we've also recognised that we're not at the end of that journey and that there's still things that we can improve in terms of that. So I'm just thinking that perhaps the prologue that you have that is in your name should reflect that we have made improvements in our proactivity, but there's still some things that we can do to progress along that journey.
That's emphasising the fact that we haven't arrived yet. There's still more work to do, and that will be for as long as we exist as a committee. Lisa and I, if you agreed, Lisa and I will find a form of words which we can add into that, reflecting on the point that you've made. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? In which case, let's move to the recommendation on page 203 that we consider and endorse the annual report for 24-25 prior to its submission to Council for approval on the 3rd of December. Please, do I have a mover? Councillor Mullin, and a seconder, Councillor Shawcross. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And Lisa, I will echo the views of everyone on this committee. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for the fullness of that particular report. I think it reflected extremely well the work that we've been doing. I think it reflects as well the improvements that Councillor Parkhurst has referred to. So thank you. But don't go away, because now on agenda item 11, which is the action tracking.
Is it forward work programme, Chair? Apologies, I've jumped one. Apologies, it's my fault. Yes, so action tracking. So this report is a summary of all your actions that you've raised and where we are up to in providing some responses to that. So again, happy to take any questions.
From Councillor Parkhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lisa. I just want to ask about the actions going back to 2023, agenda item 67, 6, and those following on page 245 to ask what the situation is and when will these be concluded and presumably presented to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so item 67 and 59 are the same action that was raised. So it was raised initially and then the second one was raised. I think this is Gareth's report on this. I don't know whether he's got any update on it. Sorry, Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's just a piece of work that needs to be concluded. I haven't got any update. It is a relatively straightforward one. It's something I just need to diarise time to do.
Thank you, Gareth. Anything else? In which case, let's move to the recommendation on page 243. This committee is requested to accept this report. Please, a mover, Councillor Mullin, and a seconder, Councillor Shawcross. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. On to the final item now, item 12, the forward work programme.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, forward work programme. So this is your forward work programme, members. It gives you the opportunity to make sure that you're happy with the forward work programme, that everything's covered and there is no changes that you want to make to it. So it's your opportunity to review and amend as you see fit to. happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions? Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. But there has been some discussion in scrutiny about some of the council's policies get approved by scrutiny or get approved by cabinet or get approved by full council. Others get approved by officers themselves, and there seems to be perhaps an inconsistency or a lack of knowledge about what policies are in force and who needs to approve them. So I'm just wondering whether a report on what policies are involved, when were they reviewed, what's the next review date, and who needs to sign them off would be of benefit. Thank you, Chair. I've also got another couple of points. So I'm just wondering if and when we might get an update on the Thurrock council legal situation, and also perhaps a report on transformational change, the process with proceeding with the various measures which have been identified. I don't think we've had a report on that for some time. Thank you, Chair.
Lisa, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, please, Chair, if I can. So if I take the policies first, that is a piece of work that I am aware that needs to take place. It was part of our CSA assessment. We've identified it. Unfortunately, we are struggling with resource at the moment to actually bring that information together. My team's just gone even smaller. I've just lost another member of staff. So it's something that I need to do, but once I get the resource, I will bring a report back to you as soon as I possibly can. In terms of the Thurrock, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know whether Chris... Pardon?
In relation to Thurrock, Gareth, are you able to give us an update as to where we are? I mean, there will be not a great deal of progress from our perspective at this stage, I guess.
No, that's correct, Chair. I updated members last time there was a significant step in the action, which was that as the defendant councils, we have agreed with Thurrock that the proceedings will be stayed whilst they pursue the principal debtors, the people who were providing the investments to them. As I said at the time, it might well be some years, in fact, before we then hear anything more in relation to that litigation, because they have to work out how much, if anything, they can recover from the principal debtors, because their claim against the councils was always on the basis that they would go to the principal debtors and then only recover any balance from ourselves.
Yeah, the other items are raised.
Yeah, Chair. So transformation, again, I think, Gareth, that's probably one of your areas as well. Are you able to identify whether we perhaps get an update report?
So a piece of work is in train. We were intending to bring that in December to Cabinet and to scrutiny. I need to confirm with the relevant team member whether that's still on track. But if it's not December, then it would be January.
Okay, I think that's all the points that you raised, Councillor Parkhurst. Any other comments on the forward work programme? In which case, can we move to the recommendation? We're invited, as we have done, to consider the forward work programme and to approve, amend as necessary, and that the internal audit performance and risk manager, in consultation with Alan and myself, be authorised to vary the forward work programme between meetings as the need arises. Please, a mover, Councillor Mullin, and a seconder, Councillor Parkhurst. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And that, colleagues, concludes the meeting. I want to thank Bethan Roberts from Audit Wales for joining us. You didn't need or require to say anything, Bethan. It was very nice to have you at the meeting. See you again soon. And thank you to everyone. See you at our next meeting, not forgetting the Treasury Management Workshop on the 5th of December. Thank you very much.